Hey there. Welcome to the Pelvis Project podcast. I'm Megan.
And I'm Roxy. We're two pelvic health experts brought together by passion for our careers, entrepreneurship, motherhood, and the desire for intentional relationships.
Join us in our mission to spread pelvic floor awareness and start conversations surrounding the truth behind genuine health, imperfect wellness, and joyfully navigating life. We are so glad you are here with us.
Let's start the conversation.
Good evening, Roxy.
Good evening, Megan.
This will be a Happy New Year episode.
We're just closing out the year on a strong note here.
Wow, I know. This is going to be, when everybody's listening to this, we will be fresh. And we hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year. And of course, like many people, we are doing this episode on just reflection, what we're leaving in 2025, what we're taking into 2026. And hopefully this resonates with a lot of you and maybe taking away some little nuggets or some food for thought going into your new year and kind of your plans for setting your intentions. I personally don't love the whole resolutions. I like the intentions if I'm going to do if I'm going to put anything on it, as far as a label, if you will. So I'm going to get us started. Roxy is currently feeding baby Bram. It's total mom life going over here while we're recording the podcast. So
I'm here. I'm good.
She's
just
here.
Multitasking.
So we're welcoming everybody back to the 2026 episodes of the Pelvis Project. And this is going to be a little different because we're just going to kind of banter back and forth a bit. But this isn't going to be like a how-to. It's not a clinical deep dive, and it's not a productivity-based episode. So this is a reflection, probably for us, considering the roles that we're in, a reflection on leadership, on nervous system wisdom, and on what 2025 maybe asked of us and what we are not going to do in 2020, or how we're going to optimize what we have, both as business owners and as humans. So before we got on, Roxy and I were kind of sharing some of our notes we had taken down for ourselves. And a lot of it, we're pretty in sync and a lot of it aligns. But it made me think about, I was with a patient just last week, and this particular person is young and her mom is there, and just asking about different resources and things to try and this or that. And I really, for a moment, I said, listen, before you go and set up another doctor's appointment, put money into this or that, we really need to be consistent on the things that we have already talked about. So, and those things just weren't getting done. And these are things that do not cost anything or very little, she already has a TENS unit. Let's try the TENS unit. Let's utilize our ice and heat. Let's utilize movement. Let's utilize going outside, drinking water. And so as we were going into this episode, it just made me think about, before we start adding to, which is what Roxy is going to kind of talk about, let's think about the things that we already are kind of doing, but not fully doing, and optimize the systems that we have in place. And think about those before we start adding in a whole bunch of it's kind of, to me, I'm like, all right, if you're suddenly going to be like, I'm going to go to the gym 10 times a week, but we're not getting quality sleep, that's not going to go well. So we need to think about just those first step things to get consistent on. So Roxy, why don't you lead us in with some of your thoughts?
Sure. That's basically my 2026. I don't know. I could put a word. I don't know if you could put a word to it. I don't know what it would be. Organize, restore order. I don't know. But just
restore
this
order.
idea.
I love that. Restore order.
Seriously. But just this idea of, man, I have so many things on my plate right now that are seemingly good in and of themselves, that really, when I'm looking ahead at 2026, I don't know that I have the capacity to add anything. but I'm not doing well with the things. I'm not doing as good as I could with the things that I do have on my plate or that I already have on my plate. So trying to maximize that, trying to look at how do I take what I already have and just make it better,
Yeah.
organize, clean up some messy sloppiness. Inevitably, when we get lots of things on our plate, when we are maxing ourselves out, we're not really doing anything well. And that's what I'm sensing in my life of
Mhm.
just saying, I'm in a busy season as a mom. I'm running a clinic and trying to be a friend to friends and trying to be a sister or a daughter and a wife and all the things outside of business. And then also I'm taking care of patients, right? So there's so many good things that I definitely feel like I'm in the right place. But I just have been reflecting and thinking, am I stewarding these well? Am I stewarding relationships
Mhm.
well? Am I stewarding gifts well? My talents well? If I'm burnt out, am I a great clinician? No. And I'm not saying I'm necessarily burnt
Right.
out. I got to be careful in 2026,
Yeah.
because I'm just recognizing how, just especially this season of being a mom with three littles, it's like, I got to be careful. I need to
Yeah.
really watch what I'm doing and be mindful and make the most of every opportunity, whether that's my time at work, I need to be making the most of that time. If it's my time at home, I need to be making the most time of that. If I have 30 minutes and I say I'm going to do a workout, I need to do that. I need to really be clear on what am I trying to do and am I doing that well? And so that's really been my kind of my biggest probably conviction as I'm just establishing new rhythms, getting back into the swing of things at the clinic. And I've messed up already. I've overextended myself many times already in the past month or two, where I'm
Mhm.
thinking, oh, why did I do
Yeah.
that? Like, why did I do that? I didn't have to say yes to that, or that could have
Right.
waited, or why did I add that in? Like, just, increasing margin in some areas and getting clear on boundaries in other areas and just really looking at what do I have in front of me that has potential, but I'm not doing anything with it, or I'm not stewarding it well, or I'm not being mindful of my time or my energy or my resources in front of me. And that's my big contribution to this conversation probably today. Or just, from my perspective, that's
Yeah.
gonna kind of be my guiding force going into 2026, leaving behind some sloppiness and some overextension. And really that probably comes back to expectations. If we really want to go deep at that, it's like I'm expecting that I have to be all these things, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to be everything for all people and that doesn't work, right? And so
Right.
getting clear on what are the true expectations, what are my actual roles, and being able to give up some of the things I'm not actually supposed to be doing, or
Yeah.
saying no to things that look cool and fun, but maybe that's not actually on brand with what my 26 needs to be.
Yeah. Well, I think when you are a business owner and a lot of people that are in our positions, and why would they know this or understand this, but when you own a business, you feel like you're supposed to work all hours of the week and plus some. For some reason, it's our babies, and so then you end up feeling that if you're not working, you're doing something wrong. And so to your point, when you're like trying to optimize your time. I can't remember what I was listening to, that it was basically like you're utilizing your time, you're being more productive in your time, but not to then allow more time to be filled with more tasks for you to be able to get it done. So then you have time for you to do what you want.
I think that comes back to, I mean, just as you're talking, it's like, oh, well, why do we do that? And it is that expectation. So I think I'm like realizing some things here as we're talking of just, oh, my expectations are if I'm not working and hustling, then I'm lazy,
Yes.
and it's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not true.
Right. Which then, like, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that
From like
goes
a
deep.
business owner standpoint, it's like, oh, yeah, then that expectation is that if I'm a business owner, I need to be, I need to be balls to the wall, pushing hard, hard. And it's like, I don't have the capacity for that in this season. So instead of doing more, let's do what we already have and do it better. Like let's take what we have and be better with it and not worry about and judge, is this an expectation that I think other people have of me? Is
Mhm.
this an expectation that's modeled from society? Like where is this coming from? And is that a realistic expectation? So maybe I need to really dive into my expectations. And that's really, I mean, it's still the same thing, but I'm just thinking about the why, the root cause. We're all about root causes, right? So like
I
the
know.
root
I
cause of
know.
this, what's going on
That's
here?
why I feel like I'm like, what's the root cause of this?
But I think it's probably my expectations of like, oh, I should be doing this and I should be super mom and I should be, you
Yeah.
know, getting every single patient perfectly healthy and smiling
I
in the midst of
uh-huh.
everything. And,
Oh, it's so true. Well, I was just talking about this in therapy today. We were talking about this sort of like expectation of you're supposed to have it all together and be perfect. And she was digging into like, where does that come from? And it just really made me pause and then think back to when the first time you start to have those thoughts like, am I good enough? Am I doing the right thing? How do I fit in? Let me just tell everybody here that if you go into business ownership, all of your like childhood insecurities get somehow pulled up as an adult, which it's very it's good work to look at, but man, it is a challenge. Yeah, no, I think it's so good. And when we can have like a blocked focus time and not just be constantly spinning our wheels in the day to day, but to be able to have focus time and then gets us to that elevated place to where we can accomplish things, then that proves to ourselves that we can accomplish and we start to rely on ourselves more, that we can do things, I think is pretty powerful. But learning to have that focus time is really tough. And I think, I know for me, Roxy and I were talking about this ahead of time. I will start these projects or these ideas that I have that are really great. But let's face it, at the end of the day, we're clinicians. So, what trumps that at work is seeing our patients and answering their emails. So, it's not like a ADD thing where we can't stay focused on something. We want to be focused on other things very badly. But when we have, an hour of chunk of time where we get to work on this project, and then we have three patients coming in, and then we have to answer emails and, all the stuff, it just gets all muddled. So being able to optimize time is a skill has to be learned.
I mean, I think that to really identify too strengths and weaknesses in that, as you were talking, it's like my strength, what's easy for me is treating
Uh-huh.
patients. I'm comfortable with that.
Same. Same.
I mean, it's not that I don't love other
Yes.
things. It's like, man, they're coming in, they have a time, I'm obligated to that, and I love
Yep.
doing it. I love treating patients. That's what I'm good at. That's where my confidence is. So it's easy for me to be like, meh, this project that I have no clue if it's even going to be successful or it's worth
I
my
know.
time is easier to push off than blocking out a time and saying, no, I'm not going to make any money right here. And I'm not going
Uh-huh.
to do what I'm good at and love. Like it's against everything
Yes.
that we have, like that just is our human nature. Like, of course, we're going to do what we love, we're good at, and what makes us money. This makes sense, not from
Exactly.
like a selfish, greedy way, but just from saying,
No, it's okay to say that. It's okay for us to be like, at the end of the day, we all have to like feed our children and pay the
yeah,
bills.
yeah. So if everything else gets sloughed off to the end, that's okay. It's going to be okay.
Totally. Okay, so good. All right. So a couple things that I had written down. And so Roxy, you can like put in your 2 cents when we get there. But one thing that I've been kind of like working with is I think the abundance mindset just it gets thrown around a lot. And it gets thrown around a lot, especially in groups of women, because we're supposed to all be like, I mean, I might get some heat for this, but like we're all supposed to, like, if we aren't 100% women supporting women, then suddenly we are, I mean, I'd have to use a bad word, but I'm not going to. And, in spaces in male dominated spaces, you don't hear that as often. And, like everybody is like respectful and like there for, I mean, it's like quietly supportive, but it's not this feeling of like, at the end of the day, we we have to steward our business as well for sustainability. And if we allow too much, so like I was thinking about this with, because you could look at abundance in a whole bunch of different lenses, but the abundance mindset of like allowing unlimited access to us, to you yourself, this is anybody, like if you allow too much, so this abundance, like too much access to you, even if you don't have boundaries with that and you don't know where that should be stopped, you lose the difference between collaboration and like self betrayal in a sense, because you start to just, I don't know if I'm making sense with that, but it's almost like there's just you allow too much in, if that makes, so it's like you get too much noise. It's this abundant, you're supposed, it's like, oh, all this abundance stuff is coming in. I'm supposed to be this abundance mindset. So more, all this is so good. And if we're not careful, then I feel like it ends up backfiring, is what I'm saying. So,
I kind of see it as a spectrum.
hmm
And we're not actually supposed to be on one end of the spectrum. We're probably supposed to find somewhere in between this. If we're really going to do the abundance, it's going to be scarcity and abundance, right?
right,
We got to find somewhere in the not true middle. That might not be good for everyone, but for ourselves, whether that's
right.
in a relationship or work or
Yeah,
I don't know, self-care, like whatever it is
yeah,
that we're talking about. I think it's a spectrum on there and we're going to land at different points. And it's not an all or nothing. I'm hearing you say like, if you aren't abundance minded, then you're automatically scarcity
yeah,
minded. And that's just
yes.
not true. I think we can use that abundance word. We can hide behind that with our own insecurity too. And like
Oh,
point the
yes.
finger at someone else, like they need to be more
Yes.
abundance
Oh,
minded,
they're
blah,
not,
blah.
but yeah, yeah,
That makes
yeah.
sense. So I think
Uh-huh.
it's more of a spectrum and it's been painted as a either or. And
Right.
I don't think that's maybe healthy to look at it that way. And I think even
Yeah.
just when we look at our patients, our healing timelines, it's
Yeah.
like, are you healed or not? We would never say that,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's like, are we progressing?
Yeah.
Are we working towards where we're headed? Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. That's all we need.
Right.
We wouldn't be like, well, sucks to suck. Like you aren't healed
Right.
yet. You must be terrible. You must be broken, right? That's basically what that.
Right. And I think that we even have abundance within our like mission statement. And I think that this last year has shown me that that can easily be used to kind of be thrown in your face, but it ties back into sustainability and stewardship well and all these other things. And so what I'm saying with that is I think that we have to have good, healthy sort of boundary around that. And there needs to be accountability with that. And we can't just, to your point, put this all or nothing. Like if you put down boundaries around things and you're like, okay, yes, however, this is all I can do, that doesn't mean that there's a scarcity. So I really loved how you explained, like how you just said that, because I think that is exactly what's happening. And that's what I'm seeing happen. And I'm just always kind of like, well, wait a second. But the other thing that I have been kind of like thinking through is the stop over explaining, over justifying, over absorbing other people's discomfort and feeling like we have to constantly be fixing things for people, which on one hand, as clinicians, we are help guiding people to healing, but it's in our nature to serve others. And so it is very difficult. And we're talking about maybe family or friends or colleagues or people we work with, like all of that to feel like, because if you tend to be a pleaser, which I mean, I am, which is being undone as we speak. But it's natural to be doing all those things for years. So then when you start to not over explain and just say no and put down these like, somebody tells you something like, oh yeah, well, that's too bad. But then you don't follow it up with, oh, let me da da, or I'll take care of it, or all this or that. It's like exposure therapy over and over again of teaching yourself not to do that. I can't tell you how many times here recently I've like started to answer a text message. I like start typing out and then I just stop and erase the whole thing. And I'm just like, sorry, I can't because I start to like over explain it. I don't need to.
Not exactly the same, but it made me think of just a little memory verse we've had Isla work on of just be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to
Uh-huh.
anger, and I just think about that, like slow to speak, because I struggle with that too of over explaining and that just coming from a place of probably insecurity in my life at least. And a lot of times Austin will even say, just ask your
Yeah.
question. I'll be like,
I
okay,
know.
so like I have to set it up.
Yeah.
I have to
I'm
set it
like,
up and preface everything. And he's like, what are you asking? Just say it. And I'm like, bleh.
I know. I
The
know.
crap.
Nathan'd be like, what do you, why? You just tell him no. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
It feels so weird, but you have to do it over and over again, like
Yeah.
exposure therapy.
But think of how quick we are. I think that's more of it. Like I'm
Yeah.
quick to want to make people understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. I'm
Mm-hmm.
quick to want to be understood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I think another thing is, and this goes into that, I have written down is like regulate kind of before reacting, just stopping. And you don't have to say something right away. You don't have to answer right away. I think I was just always kind of taught, and it's not a bad thing, but like I was my mom and I, like she was always so punctual. Like she had to be, if you weren't early, you were late. And so that evolved into me being like, okay, if somebody asks me a question, I have to answer right away and da 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 da. And you can see where that would drive somebody's nervous system. I mean, all of us into overdrive because then we're treating patients, we're trying to run a business, we're parents, we got kid stuff, we got all this. I'm trying to watch a basketball game and I'm getting text messages with questions and I feel like I'm supposed to answer them right then. And so now my attention is split. So you could see where, I mean, it snowballs. So going into, well, it's already started for me over the past couple of months, but I am not answering right away. And in fact, it might be the next day. I always tell my patients, give me 72 hours to respond to your emails. You know, if it's obviously some sort of emergency, which there never should be that in pelvic health, then
Yeah.
call your doctor. But just letting myself be present in what I'm doing, and I will get to that later instead of feeling like there's this, like, I have to do it now sort of expectation. And then that also has allowed that feeling to be just a feeling with inside of being a little quieter, a little bit more grounded, using fewer words, like all of that. Like it goes all back to the over explaining too.
I don't know if we talked about it on here already, but the pause, like if we just put a
Yes.
pause, wasn't that on a handful of episodes ago that we were
Yeah, I
talking?
think so.
I can remember if it was on here, if it was just you and me talking. But anyway, but just like adding that pause in creates capacity and margin and slows us down instead of jumping right into the next thing or into what, our response or our reaction or whatever. And as you were talking, it made me think of that, just that pause. If we add a pause
Hmm.
into our life in those moments, like how much capacity we gain then to regulate and to actually say something that's wise and regulated and not
Yeah.
emotional or off the cuff or
Yeah.
regretful later, I guess. And not that's I'm just saying that with
Yeah.
words, but I think that's just with anything. But
Right.
that pause
Right.
allows that regulation. Just made me think of that.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I think I've shared little bits on here, but it's like the week before Thanksgiving. I ended up having to take a whole week off and canceled my week because I was having some health stuff that popped up. But ultimately, what that was it coincided with pretty much entering like a season of burnout. And I never really understood what that meant until I was in it. And I can tell you that I don't want to be there again. And
Mm,
so it really made me take reflection on how I got there and what really wasn't working and what really wasn't sustainable. And so all these things like stewardship, abundance, like all this stuff is what kind of those things came up for me as how can I steward a business well, burn out? And a lot of the health things that I had happen are a direct reason from my nervous system, and when that's dysregulated, it'll do some crazy stuff. Like when it's really dysregulated, we're not talking like, oh man, I'm so anxious today. Like your body starts doing things out of the blue when it's not supposed to, and it's flippin' scary, let me tell you. And so that combined with just, I'm 42 and I am stepping into perimenopause and having some of those same symptoms. And so it's hard to kind of figure out. exactly what is going on, but I knew I had to stop. And my body was really, I teach a lot and talk a lot to patients about listening to your body. And here I was for like, 2 or 3 weeks where like I knew it. And months even before that, I had signals and signs and things were happening where I was like, yeah, I know it. I know it's coming. Like I know this, but I didn't want to stop because therefore that whole feeling of like needing to absorb other people's things and step in and try and fix stuff, like that's what I just kept doing. And that's not sustainable. So maybe it's not a business you have to steward, but think about it as it's your family that you have to steward well. And if you don't have a family, it's your health you have to steward well. That's what it gets down to at the end of the day. Like that's what we're responsible for. And we all have to be accountable for that. At the end of the day, I can't point fingers at anybody and say it's anybody's fault. Like we have to be accountable and take ownership into our role. Man, I'm really going off here.
Yeah.
like,
I
but
mean, go for it. This is just all true.
we all have to take accountability and ownership for like the situation that we're in. And hopefully you have good supportive people around you that, are there to help and not criticize and judge. And if you do have people in your circle that are like that, get them out. And that's one thing I can say, get them out. And for me, that has been something that I think my body knew for a long time certain individuals needed to get out. And so then when that happened, that's where like you can really start to make some headway because if you're constantly exposed to individuals or situations or stuff like that, it's really hard to get your footing. So I don't know, that just kind of like evolved into that little story. And well, thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Hey, I'm glad. I'm glad you shared. But I mean, I think that is, I mean, it really is. I think just the theme of what we're talking about is just being good stewards of whether it's our time, our talents, our relationships, our resources, our finances, whatever that is.
Uh-huh.
Stewarding it well is what I think really probably sums up a lot of what we're talking about here. Even you're talking about stewarding our health and our body, of saying,
Yeah.
man, are we taking care of it?
Yeah.
And are we letting that be an overflow? Are we overflowing good or are we overflowing bad into the rhythms of our lives? And I think from just a whole body standpoint, really, I mean, I'm not trying to really relate this to pelvic health, but it does because
It
it's whole
does. Yeah.
body of
Uh-huh.
saying, oh, if we choose to bring order into an area of our life that does regulate us a little bit more and that overflows then into our health or our relationship. Does that make sense? There's ripple effects that are
Uh-huh.
happening here. And so you could say, well, how is using my time wisely good for my health? Well,
Yeah.
you know what? Megan and I are expert problem solvers and we can justify not anything, but we can justify anything
Yeah.
health related, right? So it's like, bring it
Uh-huh.
on. We'll relate it. We'll connect it. It does. It all connects. And so I just think about how full circle we look at this and it's like, oh, it all connects no matter what part of our life. If our relationships are crappy, then some way, shape, or form that's going to overflow into our job or into our health or into our sleep or, whatever it is. It's all going to overflow. And are we overflowing good or are we overflowing bad?
Yeah, definitely. And I think overall, when I think about everything that we've talked about, the one thing that I like as I was just like reflecting, listening to you, I'm like, okay, so going into 2026, we need to use our time wisely because let's face it, there's so much nonsense. The amount of time we use doing things on our phone or different things like that, if we even just took like a quarter of that time away and put it towards something that was like an investment in us. So using your time wisely. And that also means in that time wisely, it could be that you're just resting. Like we have gotten so far away from rest. And it really is important that we remember that we are not meant to be going all the time. So using time wisely does not mean be more productive in all that time. That just means optimize. So then maybe you can use your time wisely enough to rest and like do something fun, get a new hobby, laugh, like talk to your friends, those sorts of things. We've lost that sense of community. Yeah. Rosie's like, mm-hmm.
No, we could, I'm just thinking, like, we could just keep rolling with this. Like, it just went to community and I love it.
I know.
This is awesome.
This is
But
escalating.
no, it's
Use your time
in such a
wisely,
good
find a
way.
community,
Yeah.
and
Like,
steward well.
yes. Like, what else can we throw in here? But no, I mean, that's so true.
Also with that, spending time with friends, all that stuff, good. And also, would just encourage people to spend time with themselves because that can also be something that happens is we're just constantly are around people and we aren't by ourselves enough to actually get to know ourselves and be, when we say listen to our body, like, okay, let's say you're anxious, and you're like, oh, golly, I'm anxious. Okay, like stop, be still. Where do you feel that? What do you notice? Like those sorts of things of finding really being best friends with yourself. I know this kind of feels like you're like, yeah, whatever. But be okay with being still. And a lot of times that's uncomfortable. And when I took my time off, I had a really good friend who I looked to as a mentor. And she was like, Megan, it's going to take you 3 days. It's going to take you 3 days before you are okay with just like not doing anything. And those first 2 days, she was right because I got pulled into work stuff. I really wasn't still and wasn't by myself, and I was super uncomfortable, like crawl out of my skin, anxious, just not anxious in my head, but in my body, really didn't like it. And that was my body being like, it was so used to doing and finding and fixing that I had to just let myself feel it and work through it. And it's just so fascinating. My other thing in 2026 is if you don't have a therapist yet, go get yourself one because it's pretty fascinating to do some of this work and dig into like just how we work. So interesting. So anyway, I don't really know if I've got much more to say about all that.
Like, that's
I feel like
good.
Forrest Gump right now. Okay, so use your time wisely, rest, find community, steward all areas of your life well, utilize what you have, and you don't have to necessarily add anything new. Just see if you can tweak the system a little bit.
Here's to 2026.
Here's to 2026. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining us this week on the Pelvis Project podcast. Help us continue the conversation by liking and sharing this episode with friends. And if you really want to do us a solid, leave us a review. If you'd like to follow us on social, check out the show notes for links. And remember, this week, take a deep breath and relax your pelvic floor.